are these people?
Another Indie Media Award honoree, Andy Worthington, is one of the co-founders of Close Guantanamo, which is a website dedicated to doing just that, closing the U.S. military base at Guantanamo Bay. Andy wrote an article about what's going on right now at Gitmo, and I wanted to cover it because I didn't really hear very many people talking about the fact that he's basically reopened Gitmo, turned it into a prison for immigrants or for migrants that were coming here, especially Venezuelan migrants, very strangely enough, for no reason, holding them without charge, for indefinite periods of time. Very messed up. So Andy, again, award-winning journalist, Trump's cruel, grubby, and lawless Guantanamo fantasy, and wanted to bring this one because I didn't see enough people bringing it, and that was this week. Over the last 3 weeks, the latest consequences of the United States' decades-long obsession with using its naval base in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, as its preferred location for violating international law has been all too apparent, as Donald Trump has chosen to use it as the focal point of his war on migrants. Little history. Bill Clinton was the first president to use Guantanamo for the lawless imprisonment and dehumanization of various groups of unpeople when he established a migrant operations center there in the 1990s, holding Haitians and Cubans intercepted at sea to prevent them from landing on U.S. soil and claiming asylum. At its height, this operation involved the detention of tens of thousands of migrants, but for the last 30 years until Trump's return, it had only ever held a few dozen people at most at any given time. Meanwhile, the next group of unpeople to be held at Guantanamo Bay, beginning with President George W. Bush and continuing throughout the presidencies of Barack Obama, Trump in his first term, and Joe Biden, were the enemy combatants, quote unquote, of the war on terror, right? War
on terror.
Terror. I know you've got that.
Terror. Yeah.
Spectacularly dehumanized Muslim men and boys, largely rounded up indiscriminately and imprisoned without any fundamental rights whatsoever as human beings. Extraordinary rendition.
Terrorism. Terror organization, terrorist attacks. Terrorism, terrorist network, terrorist attacks, terrorist group, terrorists, terrorists, instruments of terror, a terror network, terror cells.
Instruments of terror is another word for a glockenspiel, but that's just me.
Or a cuckoo clock, depending on who you are. That thing is torturous, man. 2 o'clock in the morning.
And glockenspiels are worse, dude. With the little fucking hard mallets, especially. Right. Fuck you. Yeah, it's the worst.
Of the 779 prisoners held by the U.S. military at Guantanamo over the last 23 years, just 15 remain, although all of them are, to varying degrees, still caught in a rights-shredding regime of such fundamental lawlessness that just 2 years ago, a UN special rapporteur described how the conditions at the prison amount to ongoing, cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment. Which in certain cases may also meet...
We never would have done that.
It may also meet the legal threshold for torture. It almost likely does. A cynical exercise...
the United States government. We don't do that sort of thing.
Right. A cynical exercise in dehumanizing 13.3 million people, the estimated number of undocumented migrants in the U.S. Trump's war on migrants was launched on his first day in office via an avalanche of executive orders and pompous and hysterical proclamations in which he sought to suggest that the U.S. was engaged in a quote-unquote war against a quote-unquote invasion of criminal aliens on its southern border. None of that's true. And that the country itself was overrun with undocumented migrants who, quote, present significant threats to national security and public safety, committing vile and heinous acts against innocent Americans, unquote. On January 29th, Trump suddenly brought Guantanamo back into the picture, announcing that he had ordered the Secretary of Defense, Drunky Pete Hegseth, and the Secretary of Homeland Security to expand the existing Migrant Operations Center at Guantanamo to hold up to 30,000, quote, potentially high-priority criminal aliens unlawfully present in the U.S. The worst of the worst. The week after, the first flights of migrants arrived from Texas. They were all Venezuelans, the latest unpeople to be given the offshore lawless treatment, and they were all dutifully described by government spokespeople as the worst of the worst, deliberately echoing the language used when alleged Al-Qaeda terrorists first arrived at the notorious War on Terror prison in January 2002. Even though, as with the War on Terror, the stories that emerged of these men when they were identified via photos released by the DHS or through investigations by actual journalists reveal that none of them seemed to be the worst of the worst at all. Because the worst of the worst, right, it's coming from inside the house, everyone. Instead of being the evil gang members the administration sought to portray them as, they had no criminal record whatsoever, and the criminal activities of the rest consisted of little more than having tried to get into the U.S. in search of work in a quote-unquote hostile environment, determined to criminalize them for seeking a better life. Reinforcing the inventive analogies between that War on Terror and the War on Migrants, Trump then unexpectedly decided to hold the majority of these men not in the Migrant Operations Center, but in Camp 6, one of the cell blocks of the War on Terror prison, which since 2006 has been used for the general population of Guantanamo, low-level detainees held without charge or trial. To be able to move migrants into Camp 6, Trump was able to take advantage of the fact that before he left office, President Biden, through a number of long overdue releases, reduced its population from 16 low-value detainees to just 3. All held for over 2 decades, by the way, without charge or trial. Thanks, habeas corpus. Thanks, Obama. And all still, not Obama, I mean, again, 2 decades without trial. All still held despite having long been approved for release. These men were obligingly shunted into a neighboring facility, Camp 5, where the other 12 men are held, all high-value detainees, as if there are any high-value detainees at this point, and including the men charged but still not tried in connection with the 9/11 attacks. This involved overriding protocols in place since the high-value detainees first arrived at Gitmo from CIA black site torture prisons in September 2006, which were designed to prevent them, for national security reasons, from ever having any association whatsoever with the prison's general population. Womp womp. Even more significantly, moving migrants into the War on Terror prison was blatantly illegal because the law establishing the U.S. government's right to hold prisoners there, or the AUMF that was passed a week after the 9/11 attacks, only justifies the military imprisonment of foreigners at Gitmo who are regarded as having some involvement with Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, or associated forces connected to 9/11, or other international acts of terrorism. So every Venezuelan migrant is connected to an act of international terrorism? That's basically what they're saying without saying, because they have to be. But the law doesn't really mean anything to Trump. As it says, the law apparently means nothing to him or the inadequates that he's put in charge of the DOD and the DHS. Hence the escalating number of flights that, as of last Thursday, had delivered 178 Venezuelan migrants to Guantanamo, 127 held in Camp 6, and just 51 in the Migrant Operations Center. All right. Facing mounting criticism, not least via a lawsuit submitted by rights groups including the ACLU and the Center for Constitutional Rights, who sought access to the migrants and pointed out that because they were detained on U.S. mainland, they had a constitutional right to legal representation. Trump seemed to accept defeat, putting all but one of these men on a flight back to Venezuela via Honduras and sending the other men back to detention on the U.S. mainland. 2 days later, however, another flight arrived from Texas, containing another 17 men who, again, have been imprisoned in Camp 6 on the basis that, as a Trump administration official told the New York Times, quote unquote, they were in the category of high threat illegal aliens. The Times later reported that the 17 men, aged 23 to 62, were 7 men from Honduras, 4 from Colombia, 3 from El Salvador, 2 from Guatemala, and 1 from Ecuador. So there weren't even anybody from Venezuela, according to a document seen by Carol Rosenberg. So how long this dark farce will play out is still unknown. Yesterday, 5 Democratic senators sent a letter to Trump complaining about his illegal and unjustified transfers of non-citizens from the U.S. to the detention center at the naval station Gitmo Bay, which they called unprecedented, unlawful, and harmful to American national security, values, and interests. The senators, who are all corporate douchebags, Dick Durbin, Alex Padilla, Patty Murray, Peter Welch, and Chris Murphy from Connecticut, also sought explanations about Trump's claimed legal authority for his transfers of migrants to Gitmo and the source of funding for the operations, and requested a reply by March 10th. Will Trump even deign to reply? No one knows. Go ahead.
I wonder if Marco Rubio will take up his old job at the facility again now that this is happening. You know? You
mean Riverboat Ron DeSantis?
That would be correct.
You said
Ron DeSanctimonious.
You said Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
Rubio wasn't in the military. He meant DeSantis. Will Trump, again, we don't even know if Trump's going to reply. He and his administration appear to be uniquely contemptuous of any kind of oversight whatsoever, specifically because those driving the government's policies, including Trump himself and his Project 2025 backers, seem to believe that there should be no constraints whatsoever on the president's executive power. For the sake of the Constitution and that guy, and the centrality of separation of powers, which prevents executive overreach, it's hoped that at least some Republicans in Congress, as well as the judiciary, will recognize that anything that looks like a policy in which Congress is either sidelined or ignored completely, and or which shows contempt for existing laws, is very probably part of a deliberate attempt to further Trump's Project 2025 agenda, and will respond appropriately in defense of the Constitution. I think still a lot of that Project 2025 is just Heritage Foundation wish list stuff. It's not necessarily a specific and deliberate plan. Okay. But what Andy closes out with and says that the current Guantanamo project, in which hapless migrants dressed up as the worst of the worst are imprisoned in a cell block used for 18 years to hold the last victims of that particularly malignant smear, is just a clear case in point. Close Guantanamo. Info at closeguantanamo.org. Follow at Andy Worthington on Twitter. I also, if you go to indiemediaawards.substack.com, there is a page dedicated to Andy with his links where you can find him and follow him on social.
Have a good time with your Bitcoin?
No, please do not pay us in Bitcoin. Please do not pay us in anything other than fiat USD cash if you are able
your
to.
Crypto and everything else that you're playing with.
Shut up, you clown. All right. So there's our wall of fame. We love these people. All right. The way to get us actual cash like Colin just did is ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. We have Cash App $Indie News Network, PayPal.me/Indie News Network as well. And then, of course, we have our INNnewsletter.com, which I'd love for you to subscribe to. But you know what? Don't pay there. Go to Ko-fi, because INN Newsletter, let me tell you, Substack takes 10% and then Stripe takes another 2.5%. So we're only getting, again, let's try to keep as much. You want to support the streamers? Those platforms have got hundreds of millions of dollars in VC money that are supporting them. We got you for supporting us to hold them accountable. We do not accept Bitcoin. We do not accept crypto. I don't want crypto. Fuck your crypto. I love you if you want crypto, but we're not interested. I know that it's a scam. But these people gave us an actual cash, to one of those places, Cash App, Ko-fi, PayPal, or INNnewsletter.com by subscribing on a monthly or annual basis. We are definitely demonetized, deboosted in the algorithm, and in Rockfin's case, soon to be deplatformed, likely. So support us there where you can. Cash App, Ko-fi, PayPal.
Asking for your financial support.
We have to get some new people because I don't want to hear that asshole's voice ever again. All right, and certainly not asking anyone for money because I still want my
keep doing it.
I want my $27 back.
Keep doing it.
Fuck
just
that.
To upset you.
Cash App, $Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network. Sign up at INN Newsletter.
Break here.
No, sign up at INNnewsletter.com, but don't pay any money over there because Substack doesn't deserve the money. They've been really douchey and throwing all their efforts into corporate media hacks like Jim Acosta and Jennifer Rubin. And I saw Joyanne Reed, by the way, this week.
Coming to a Substack newsletter near you.
Yep. She's there too now. It's just a matter of time before we get Rachel over there too. Hempcar, good to see you. I stayed home and went to the local college, no loans. By the way, Hempcar is one of those fam that I thankfully found, reconnected with on Facebook. He was watching us exclusively on Rockfin. It's like, you guys disappeared. I don't know what happened. Then I explained what happened, and he's like, oh shit, well, I'll come over on Rumble. But again, don't Rumble Rant, because Rumble Rant, they take 50%, and then we have to pay PayPal. If you're going to subscribe at Rumble, do it with a monthly subscription there. The channel subscriptions, they claim to pay us 100%. And then we got to pay PayPal a little rip, but okay.
Thing sucks.
Yeah. I mean, just getting paid out, and it's such a hassle that the people watching don't really know anything about having to deal, what we have to deal with that. And once they find out, they feel bad, and they'll alter, hopefully, how they support their content creators so that it puts the most money in their pocket.
People's brains would explode if they realized, like, everything you got to pay for, all the software you got to do, all the monthly subscriptions you have to have just to use the software, all the, like, it's just to get it out to the places where people can see it, Shout
out and love to our brother Oz. Okay.
Correct. What up, Oz?
Stay away from my chickens, Oz.
Stay away from my chickens, Oz. And definitely eggs, too.
Yeah.
Stay away from my eggs. You can help us out by contributing over at Cash App, Ko-fi, PayPal, or even at Substack, although try to do it one of the first three. Cash App if you have $Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network. Yeah, support independent media because we need it more than ever, and I love you all.
Yeah. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
No! We just fucking lost the stream!
Can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen to 50,000 dead? And now we know our mission, we form a militia, make Congress a prison. No, I play civil when all these dead won't make you listen. What's more American than slaying your oppressors? What's more American than liberty or death first? God, I thought we were founded on abolishing the tyranny of those who would starve a village all to live empirically. And I regret that I have only one life to give for my cause now that I can see the cause so clearly. See, I want our leaders, regardless of party, to fear me.